man behind the counter to the woman who has come in. She is shaking her umbrella, and I look the other way as they are kissing their hellos, and I'm pretending not to see them, and instead I pour the milk. Do, 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 do. A story of an actor who had died while he was drinking. It was no one I had heard of, and I'm turning to the horoscope, looking for the funnies when I'm feeling someone watching me, and so I raise my head. There's a woman on the outside looking inside. Does she see me? No, she does not really see me, 'cause she sees her own reflection, and I look the other way, and she kind of knows she's hitching up her skirt. I was sat on the bus with a backpack and a shoebox, probably a hat, on the bus. On my lap, I was in the front row, so I could see the view, and just before the bus left the terminal, a woman slipped in, sat next to me. I completely ignored her. I know the drill. I stuck my headphones in, looked straight ahead. Culturally, I've figured it out. It's not necessary to acknowledge one another with a smile or any sort of body language. It's probably best not to do so, because the one who has entered the shared space understands that privacy should not be infringed upon if you don't have a good reason. Public places are pretty quiet, and Finns are not really chatty people. I've been told that their biggest fear is not death, but to be trapped in an elevator where you might have to start a conversation. So I ignored her with grace. She had no idea I wasn't a Finn. But this story actually begins with shoes. Now, shoes are a common theme in my writing and in my poems, as hats. Shoes, hats, socks. I'm really big on pockets. Okay. This day started with shoes. I had decided to go downtown to buy a pair of good walking shoes, so I took the tram and I got my walking shoes, and I was helped by a blonde, personable, friendly, young gentleman in Intersport, and I left the store with exactly what I wanted, and it even had excellent customer service. I was standing outside waiting for my tram, and I had 20 minutes before it was time to go, before my tram was going to come, and the wind was biting cold, and I had to decide, do I go in the tunnel and hide from the wind? Being from Minnesota, where we like weather, and we have lots of extreme weather, I think it's wonderful to feel alive. I love the cold, it reminds me of home. So do I go in or do I not? And I was just about ready to decide which I was going to do when I realized I was standing right outside the Atheneum Museum. Now recently I've decided to write a book about Finland. And in the book, it has rekindled a lot of my interest in Finnish history. And I had recently seen lots of pictures of Finnish art, and there I was standing in front of the Atheneum, and it had been a decade before I'd gone inside, since I'd been inside. So I took this as a ta-da moment, and I bought my ticket and made my way up the big granite stairs. And I got a key, and to my delight, I took off my boots like a giddy schoolgirl and stuck all my stuff into a little lockbox and put on my brand new sneakers to walk through the Atheneum. And then I remembered that they had a wonderful bookshop filled with so many wonderful things to see on top of, other than just the museum. They also had soup. Now, a good bowl of soup is harder to find these days in these fast food days and a kebab express. So I also treated myself to a bowl of soup. And as I was sitting in the Atheneum Cafe, I was surrounded by afternoon museum visitors. And most of them were a little older than me. Most of them were women. And I got to experience the camaraderie at each one of the tables. And it was pure delight. I have to say, something about that experience that day was like a slice of the best of all Finnish culture. And when I see that kind of thing, I always want to take people's pictures and interview them and ask them questions. And I'm still thinking how I could. I think I might be able to get away with it if I figure out how to do it. So, I had my soup, I had coffee and pulla, I had my new shoes on, and I made my way through the Atheneum. And I saw all the traditional Finnish art. There was also a display on one of the famous Finnish painters, so I got to see some of his work. And after I was done, I wrote a poem about it. Now, I just wrote this down, and it's not very polished, but I'm going to read it to you because I can. So it's called the Atheneum. The afternoon was spent in trees, etched on, scraped off, lined in Indian ink. Gnarled limbs caught, reaching for the sun. Even under cloud cover, the hardness of blue sky never softened. Oils of inlets and islets from bird tower specks. Real and imagined, there were hundreds of gild-framed moments with trees. Stood upon, cut down, nurtured and cursed. Prayed over, turned over, buried and burned. A forest-made field, a ring round a stone, a proud crest on a hill. Trees in attendance tilting as fences or wooden vessels across water, or stoically growing in whitewater rage. As coffins, as crosses, wedding table chair, bark and branch from pine trunk to tar, life played itself out in a backdrop of trees. and hope was tied up in ribbons to the top. Of the boughs, the dreams were mute and muddled in fairy wing ink, shadows with switches in black of deep water, and leaves with the faces of mothers and lovers danced in the canopies, fell to the ground. Life in Finland is all about trees. It was displayed right there in the museum. It's recorded in the art. And my new trainers had taken me through 100 years or more, and they still felt like clouds on my feet. I was heading up down the large stairway when over the PA speaker I heard that there would be a male traditional quartet singing in front of the oil paintings on the 3rd floor. How could I leave? I turned around and headed back up those wide granite steps, and as I turned around, I could see the National Theater through the windows, and the sun was setting, the sun was setting as the colors faded on the granite, the lights went on in that square. And I turned around, and I headed up the stairs. So back onto the bus, remember? Left you on the bus, got my new shoes on, now I'm on the bus. Next to the woman. So, we were leaving the tunnel. I snuggled into my seat, stuck my headphones on, because I listen to some piano music. I know it's a internet station, and I know every song they play by heart, no thinking's required, and I get to think my own thoughts as I juggle my poetry, and I juggled the quartet that I just saw sing, and the Athenaeum, and everything that I had just experienced that day, and I was going to write poetry, and just ignore the persons, the people on the bus, and everybody next to me. And as we pulled out of the tunnels, I felt myself becoming the invisible commuter, like a good commuter. Now the woman sitting next to me was sitting stiffly, and her eyes were straight ahead. She had no headphones on. And something inside me said, "Tell her the story about the boy." And I said, "No." No. And I'm looking, and the sun is setting. Beautiful sunset fading. I'm in the front row. Tell her about the boy. No, I'm not going to tell her about the boy. Tell her about the boy. And I took out my headphones, and I thought, I'm just going to listen to the environment and get rid of this, whatever this is, nudging it, because she was sitting like this. I'm an invisible commuter. Taking my headphones out didn't help. Tell her about the boy. Tell her about the boy. And I knew the minute I was sitting there how absurd the situation was. It was getting dark on the bus. A large American woman with way too many clothes on, way too big, huge backpack, and a shoebox. And I leaned over to her and I said, "I want to tell you a story." She didn't say anything. She didn't say anything. And so I had to say it again. I want to tell you a story. In English, I said. And she said, just like this, she said, "Okay." And so I began, and I told her about the boy, and I told her about the cards. And as soon as I got to the part where he had taken out the cards and it was revealed that it was football cards that he was so excited about, she said, she said, and it was sincere as if she was doing a drama, as if she was on stage, or it was just so sincere. She said, I don't remember being that excited about anything for a very long time. She was 24. At 24, life should be as exciting as it was for that boy with the cards. And she'd listened to me and she had softened up a little bit. And so I continued. And I told her about the Attenium. And I told her about my new shoes. And I told her about the blonde, helpful sales guy. And I told her about the beautiful women at the top of the hill at the economics, at the School of Economics in their beautiful clothes. And I told her all the stories I could tell her in that short period of time. And she had relaxed. And we sat back and we admired the view of the city and the sun was setting. And we sat back and it felt a little bit like we had painted those pastel buildings. This was our city. And in that moment we had somehow bonded. And then I laughed and I said, now you have got a story when you go home to tell your family. She said, yes. I said, tonight at the dinner table, you're going to talk about the American woman who leaned over in the dark bus and told you a story about the boy with the cards. And she got up to go. She said, this is my stop. This is my stop. And she got up and she was going down the aisle. She was going down the aisle and she turned around and she said loudly in English, hey! I'm going to look for your book of poems someday. Maybe I'll read them. And in that minute, my book became more real. And my poems became bigger. And my future became brighter. And I realized after she left that the urge to share with her about the boy in the story was so overpowering for me. It was so overwhelming. And I dragged my feet. I tried not to talk to her. I tried to not tell her. I tried to fight it. And the only reason I wouldn't have told her and shared my joy was because of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being different, fear of offending, fear of being misunderstood. And if I would have let that fear stop me, she wouldn't have experienced the joy of the boy in the cards. And the joy of the boy in the cards, who he paid no attention to anyone around him, has been multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. See, I took off my shoe and killed it. Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, little snowflakes falling from the sky. Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling on my hand. Okay, so there was a day where I did not want to talk to anybody on the tram. It's very interesting following me in public transport. I have to say. The more I'm aware of that, the more I'm aware of that. And I did not want to talk to anybody on the tram that day. And I was determined to not do that. And I got on, and luckily at 1 o'clock that afternoon, there was only 6 people on the tram. And I got on and I looked out the window and kept my eyes focused out the window. No, I was invisible. Damn it. No one was going to talk to me. So I thought, okay. So, sitting there, 6 people on the tram. Next thing I knew, there was a man next to me smelling of alcohol. It's an empty tram. He sits next to me. I thought, great, I know, okay, so ignore him, ignore him, ignore him. Out of the corner of my eye, then he coughed, and he was also a smoker. He was smoking and drinking, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, lot. To keep my hand out the window, just don't look. And then I noticed out of the corner of my eye, he was holding a bag of, you know, those fox candies? Fox candies?
Mm-hmm.
I always think they're old people candy. I don't know, something about it. They're not little kid candy. I don't know. Anyway, he was holding it up. It was cut pristine, and he was holding it so nicely, and he was offering it to the woman standing next to him on the tram, and I thought, oh, they must be together. There was something incredibly innocent about the way he held it, and working in a daycare, kindergarten, it was as if he was passing his birthday candy around. And I thought, it was just so sweet how he held the bag to the woman. She denied, and then next thing I knew, he said, which, you know, offered me some and finished. And I thought, dang it, one glance and my invisibility is blown. And I declined politely, and I didn't finish. And he continued then to talk to me. And I noticed that he was about 65 years old, and yes, he smelled a little of alcohol, but he wasn't as drunk as I was before I looked, you know. And he was clean, and he was about 65, and he was definitely not wearing enough clothes for the temperature outside. There was something off about that. And he offered me the candy, and I said, and then he said something else, and I said, oh, I speak English, which is the, get out of jail free clause. I speak English. Then he said, oh, you come from a warm and friendly people. And me, being me, put my arm around him and gave him a little squeeze, and I said, yes, I do. And he exchanged a few words in English about America. And I said I was from Minnesota. And he said again, you come from a warm and friendly people. I said, yes, I do. And he said, my wife's in the hospital, and she's not waking up. And I said, oh, I'm very sorry about that. She's been there 9 days, and the doctors tell me she's not going to wake up. I said, oh, I'm very sorry about that. That must be hard. He said, it is so lonely in my bed. You don't know how lonely it is in my bed. It's so lonely. I'm very sorry about that. I bet it is lonely. I've been drinking a little bit, he says. I said, oh, I would be drinking a little bit too. It's a very hard thing. I said, do you have any kids? And then he went on and he started telling me about his kids. And then he went in to finish. And I didn't understand it all. And then we were at his stop, and he stood up. And he made his way to the middle of the exit in the tram. And the tram stopped, and the doors didn't open. And those 6 people in the tram, yelled. I thought this was amazing to me. They interceded for the drunk man and yelled at the guy to please open the door, open the door, open the door. So finally, the tram driver opened the door. The gentleman got down onto the sidewalk, turned around, and he said, my cane is in the tram. And the 6 strangers took the cane off my chair, and I watched it pass down the length of the tram and out the tram door. The tram doors closed, and away we went. And I thought to myself, that was an unusual situation that just had happened. Now, did those 6 strangers intercede with the drunk old man because they had heard his story? Did they feel like they maybe knew him and cared a little bit more because they had just witnessed what had just happened? Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, little snowflake falling from the sky. Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.